Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. Today we have a special panel episode for you featuring Ceci Gomez, Liz Cho, and Darnell Fine. Ceci and Liz recently participated in our Mastermind Ed course, Culturally Responsive Leadership, created and facilitated by Darnell Fine and Renee Green. Both Ceci and Liz joined the course with a large team from their respective schools, and the impact of learning together as a school team continues to have a big impact on their school setting. This Spotlight episode is all about the power of teams learning together. And in the full-length episode, we talk about the key takeaways from the course, the conversations the course has prompted about culturally responsive leadership, and the plans that each school has for moving forward. To hear the full episode, subscribe to Coach Better wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is a great insight into the kinds of learning that happens within our online courses, from Mastermind Ed all the way through to Coattail. In fact, our panel today are also graduates of the Coattail program, so you can see the personal learning network that you build through Coattail can take you in so many different directions. Coattail will empower you to leverage innovative, technology-rich learning opportunities in your school setting as a teacher, a coach, or a leader. Registration for our next global cohort opens on the 18th of October and closes on the 14th of November. Find out more and join the waiting list at coattail.com today. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Coach Better podcast. I am super excited to be here with a panel of amazing educators. I'm here with Ceci Gomez, Liz Cho, and Darnell Fine. And Ceci and Liz both recently participated with teams of teachers from their schools in the Mastermind Ed that Darnell and Renee, who can't be here today and sends her apologies, facilitated for us at Eduro Learning. And it was such an amazing learning experience. I was kind of on the sidelines, like watching all these comments come in the forums and seeing all the growth being shared, not just within our private learning management system, but also on Twitter. Super exciting. And when Darnell and I debriefed after the course was over, we thought, wouldn't it be amazing to have this opportunity where participants could reflect on their experience with the facilitator? Because so often teachers go to a PD session and then it's kind of forgotten in the rush of getting back to work. We don't usually have that time to stop and think about it. And this is a couple of weeks after. So now we can think about it with the perspective of a little bit of time. That's what we're doing here today. And I want to give each of you a chance to say hello, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background. And I will start with Ceci, just because I see you first on my screen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ceci Gomez Galvez, and I am based in Saigon, and I work at Saigon South International School as an EAL teacher, but also advocate for culturally responsive classrooms in my school. And I'm very excited to just be here and contribute to this conversation, which is, I think, long overdue of having conversations about culturally responsive curriculums in classrooms. So, and also I want to thank Kim and Darnell for really putting this together so that we can have an open conversation about our collective learning that we had a couple of months ago.
Thank you so much. And I'll get Liz to introduce herself next.
Hi, everybody. I feel like I should just say my name is Liz Cho, and I echo everything Ceci just said. And in addition to that, I guess to introduce myself, I am currently the principal of teaching and learning at Korea International School. And it really, I think Ceci said it beautifully. And we're really excited to get into this work because it was definitely a long time coming. And I really thank the opportunity that we had to learn with Darnell and Kim for providing that opportunity for us as well. So excited to be here.
Thank you, Liz. And Darnell, can I get you to just say a little hello and tell us a little bit about yourself too?
I'm Darnell Fine. I'm an instructional coach at Singapore American School. I also do a lot of work with DEI initiatives, curriculum assessment, coaching responsive pedagogy in international schools. And I think even though I facilitated or was one of the co-facilitators with Renee of this, I guess, session or course, Liz and Ceci were kind of like co-facilitators. I wish people could actually see the forums and see the interaction. So it was more of a joint effort. So I'm excited to be here to talk to everyone.
So much has been said already. I'm like trying to take so many mental notes about the wonderfulness that is happening in this conversation right now, because it feels like we're back in that forum right now and we're all reflecting on this big, huge learning. And it's just making me remember that I miss being part of that. Like Liz said, take your computer on a weekend and then just start engaging with this conversation is kind of like reading a book where you really didn't want to leave a book and then you just pick it back up, right? Because something wonderful is about to happen and your predictions about this have been right and all of these things have been confirmed. There's nothing more empowering than for your passions about advocacy and representation and the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion and cultural responsiveness to be acknowledged by people that you highly respect and people that also do the same kind of work and find you inspirational and you find inspiration in others. And this is what this forum really did. I agree with Liz too, that I think Darnell kind of like held our hand the way that it should have been done in this course, because it is it has to be a self-led course. And that is one of the beautiful things that we're finding about online learning right now, is that it's more like a journey rather than necessarily a participation and I have homework and I have to do this. It's more like a journey that you're taking now in a self-paced one where you can take your time to reflect and think and reflect again. And I wish I could tell you everything that has happened behind the scenes of this work and the conversations that we've had with our DEI group, in collaboration with Dr. Katrina Moran, who is my head of school, and I couldn't feel prouder that she was part of it. Our associate head of school, David Chadwell, was also a part of it. And we had just a collection of people from different divisions in our school that are part of the DEI DEI group that we have at our school that joined the course. And then the conversations we were having, when we actually had to sit in front of each other, talk about the things that we posted, the things that we were vulnerable enough to share and courageous enough to share, not really knowing, like Liz says, we don't do things just because we want other people to see them. But in this particular case, it was like you knew it was going to be seen by people who might later come to you and say, tell me more about that, like on the spot, like especially when it's about this kind of work. And when you have your head of school, let me tell you, stopping you in the hallway and then telling you about something you wrote in a forum, it's powerful. It's super powerful. And I do want to say this, like all of this that has sparked, a lot of this work is actually being embedded into our strategic plan. And I should probably tell you that that has been the impact that it's had. These conversations that they have we thought about, and how do we embed this language and these kind of like, I know that we're not forcing or pushing people, but there's certainly an expectation. Like Darnell says, when we pick the teachers that we want to work at our schools and the educators, we expect them to excel at the things that they should be experts in. And this is one thing that our school is going to be holding others accountable to also know about, to also participate into the conversation. Nobody has to be an expert yet, but be willing to learn together. Darnell mentioned before also disruption. And I was like, this is the beautiful thing about disruption. It's the right kind of disruption. It's the kind of disruption where you want to kind of take a deep breath and feel a little funny in your, feel a little bit of butterflies in your stomach, because when you are going to respond, when you're going to engage, it takes you out of the comfort zone. You are going to have to. It's critical work, like Darnell said. It's imperative right now. And I also appreciate Carmen. Please do send my best to her, Liz, because she is wonderful.
Absolutely.
And I do have to say, we gotta look to our younger teachers too. Our teachers that are coming with this like wokeness. I love it. This passion. They have experienced their educational later years and their higher education a little bit different than we have, that we're a little bit older. And I have had some phenomenal conversations with our younger, newer staff, where I have even gone like, I hadn't even thought about that. I hadn't even thought about that impact. I hadn't even thought about looking at our curriculum or the learning in our classrooms that way. And it has all really sparked because Dr. Moran and David and just the leaders. And this is why I appreciate people in leadership like Liz, who will make the space for these things to happen. There are, even in PubPD Asia, when we tried to have a conversation about this a few months ago or last year, and we had questions, and it was great. We did have some people who said, I don't know if I'm ready to engage in this conversation online and on Twitter. And I understand that the readiness to be vulnerable is a big deal, and it is disruptive, and it is critical, and it is all of these things that we're saying. So for a school, the leaders of a school to say, I will invest professional development money and funds. I will invest time. I will invest my own perspective and vulnerability to see this all together and to make it become part of this bigger piece of work that is going to define the identity of our school in the next decade. Talk about impact. Like, that is, to me, the epitome of this kind of work. That it has to be like somebody flicking a domino, and then everything starts falling into place, and you see this beautiful thing being created. And I feel like being part of this course, really, some of the parts that we had, some of the things that we shared, like the first document that talks about the origins and the foundations, I guess, of like white supremacist practices. Like, just saying the words white supremacy in a room of educators and stuff, it does spark that kind of like, whoa, what are we going to talk about? And I don't know what, and this is going to be a little awkward and a little nerve-wracking, but there's light at the end of that tunnel, right? There's like an end game to all of this. And all of it is I cannot wait to see how far the impact of this work goes, and from all the learning and conversations that we had. So for us, it has been like something that now we're looking at each other, people from our DEI course or people who received the same course, and we're like, I see you. If there's a meeting where something happens that we're like, I see you. And we find that kinship too, because we've had those conversations. We've had those moments of learning and growing together. So.
You totally read my mind, Ceci. I was going to ask you, the next question was going to be about the impact, and you read my mind, and like, I'm just like blown away. Obviously, I know that the course was super powerful, but to hear when you talk about the dominoes fall, I just really wish that everyone could have this experience, and it could be the dominoes falling amongst so many international schools. And like, I'm so excited that your two schools sent such large groups, and we had other participants in the course too, but your two schools sent such large groups. Just, yeah, that's super exciting. So thank you for sharing all that. And I will ask Liz the same question. What has been the impact in your school so far?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned before, I think studying really clarifying one of our major goals for next year to be one. And so one of the couple of the concrete things, we have built it into the teacher evaluation process, that this whole question about this and how you're going to be more culturally responsive and what your goal is regarding that is built into that system. And it was wonderful to have, obviously, as I mentioned, the middle school principal, Jim, there, as he has been on the committee to know, a committee that was really driven by teachers to look at, like, what do teachers need, when administrators come in and have observations with them and give them feedback. And so it was really a no-brainer. If we really say that this is one of the school goals, then we build it in, we refine that so that they know that it's there. And it's very explicit. One of the other cool things was our secondary librarian also took the course. And Monica, after she stopped in and she said, I know we're revamping our reports for middle school because we're going fully standards-based grading and reporting as well. So we got to that step with middle school. And as we had a reporting committee and we were reviewing, one of the things that the teachers wanted were the learning habits on the report card. And it's been very interesting. Anyway, so that's a whole nother process. But Monica came in one day and she said, Liz, after this course, particularly and reflecting further, I've been thinking about it since our PD with Darnell as a whole school. But she was like, the more I think about it, these learning habits that we discussed and deconstructed in the library and everybody got to say what they thought, blah, blah, blah. She's like, it is all based in the white supremacy culture. She's like, and I don't know what to do because the more I think about it, it's so uncomfortable to me. And it was one of these great moments. And I said, you know what, you need to share that. You need to share that as we get together in my space, Fishbowl Middle School. Teachers are going to go in and we're going to talk about this. And every middle school teacher is going to come through. You have to bring that up. And then it sparked these conversations, right? Our associate principal going, what do you mean? What? I never thought about it that way. And then it really sparked conversations ongoing. And then it allowed the teachers who were feeling uncomfortable with it to really voice their thoughts as well and why it was. Like, it wasn't just, because it all started with good intentions, right? The things and the behaviors that we expect our students to have, but recognizing maybe we never even thought that there was this, right, latent bias that we, that kind of lays there that we're uncomfortable with, and now we can voice it. We can talk about why we're uncomfortable with and what this is doing. So again, that's a whole nother conversation in and of itself. But in the end, it was, hey, we're not going to put learning habits on the report card. It's not the place to do it. It's because historically, when you look at other places, they do it, right? Intention is good, but we're like, why do we have to do that? Just because this is right, or we really don't. So we're like, hey, if we add it later because we've thought about it better and we have a perfect rationale. Nothing is ever perfect, right? But nonetheless, it's far better than what our thought process was now. Then let's reconsider there. So we were so close to having that end product, and then we're like, nope. And kudos to my middle school admin team for supporting that and saying, yeah, you know what, everything that we've been talking about and heard makes sense. So there's something that's another concrete thing that is happening from that and from the teachers who are in the course, and being able to really very, anxiously, like, I don't know how to bring this up. But I could say, hey, do it. I'm here to support you. Let's have this conversation. And I could put it in documents that people when they were taking, their glances and review, they could look at it and really go, that's interesting. So we're really hoping that continues. And we're continuing this work after Darnell worked with us. A lot of questions came up, particularly for our school context. We're an international school in Korea. So how do we connect that BLM to history, to all of these things that we're talking about in the white supremacy? Does that connect to our context now? With a lot of high population of Korean students, Asian students, what does this mean in Asia? And so within that, we tapped into Dr. Josephine Kim. So that's another PD that we're continuing on. And we have a whole community work that's beginning. And this is another concrete third win, my whole business staff. So I think you understand, working in international schools, you have the business staff culture, right? Like the staff that's the local staff aspect of the school, and then all the foreign teachers. And so with this one, I'm like, this is such relevant conversation for us to have. So she's working with all parts of the school, students included. So that's been exciting work that's happening in May, but that sparked that from bringing Darnell in and saying, let's talk about these things. And then what is appropriate into our context. And also, as Darnell has mentioned and always says, half your curriculum walks in the room with the people who are walking into your classroom. And so we are really valuing the voices that exist and the experiences, and finding ways for those stories to be told. And I really want to empower Liz, who is another Liz at my school, who really wanted to kind of work with, can I give a PD on how to tell stories and, make voices come to life? And I'm like, I will support you 100%. So, really finding opportunities to be able to do that. So talked way too long, but here are some very concrete examples of what work can look like. And hopefully I can continue to do better with my amazing team. And when I say team, I mean the literal ones that I have here with my admin as my coaches that I oversee, but also my team of international friends and educators who support me all the time, like the three of you on this screen right now. So yeah, it's exciting and intimidating and daunting. Bah.
I can't believe how many like thoughtful, clear, and detailed things you just rolled off the tongue there. I mean, that is amazing. When did this course only, time is flying. Time is not normal for me right now, but I feel like this course only finished like 2 months ago, right? And both of you have said huge, major impact. And I know the work did not start with this course, so I'm not saying it just came from this one thing, but that is really amazing to hear all of that impact that is and continuing to happen. Like I feel super excited by that. Darnell, I want to give you a chance to share your thinking on what Liz and Ceci have just shared.
I've just been enjoying listening, and Zoom keeps telling me my internet is unstable. So thank you all for sharing that. I don't really have a response to it, but I guess like to hear all of the amazing work is inspiring. I think sometimes like what I've been finding in this for this course and what you all have been saying and beyond, that like you can say something to people who are hundreds of miles away, and they take it and they put it in their context, and it sounds so meaningful and it looks so meaningful. But you can say the same thing at home. And it's interesting how it doesn't necessarily translate, or you don't see the implementation in the same way. So just like hearing that, I think it's super inspiring, and it's also something that I'm seeing. So it's really, really interesting and exciting. But ultimately, I see education as a practice of freedom. So we're all not one community, but we all exist in a network with one another. And it was so wonderful to not only see from afar the impact that these different concepts are having, but to see just within the course how folks were interacting and building off of one another. And I didn't necessarily get to share all of my takeaways. So a lot of what folks were sharing around their classroom libraries, around having tough conversations, even if I was sharing resources, sometimes I was researching what the appropriate resource was and then taking it and using it in my particular context. So I learned a lot from the questions and forcing me to inquire and investigate. So even though I wasn't a participant sharing my projects within the course, I was always creating and seeing what worked in my particular context, and so incredibly inspired that what you all were exploring, having an impact in your context, and still learning from what you all are doing and trying those things in my context. So thank you all for sharing.
That was perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the statement that you made about how you can say things to people hundreds of miles away, and it's impact and received, and the process of how that all happens is very different than if you say it in your own school community. And I think that is something, like I know I mentioned at the very beginning of the call, one of the things I think that is really powerful about remote learning right now is that we have access to so much of that potential knowledge, and we don't want to miss out on our opportunities to have that kind of door opened. And it is ironic and frustrating. I know, I think all of us know on the call what happens when you go away to give a presentation or do a workshop or train. Everything you say is, wow, no one's ever told us that before. But then there's somebody else sitting in the room like, oh my God, I've been saying this for the last 3 years. So we all know that experience, but I really appreciate the the way that you described it and the way that we can see the concrete impact of that work in Liz and Ceci's stories. I mean, just hearing the three of you back to back and how you summarize that, it's just, well, it's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us for today's conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please head over to edurolearning.com to find out about all our professional learning opportunities, including our certificate programs, Coattail, The Coach, and Women Who Lead. We only open registration for each of our global cohorts once a year, and you can find registration details, program details, and testimonials from our graduates at edurolearning.com. If you prefer to get started with something right now, we've also got self-paced courses where you can earn recertification credits, private mentoring packages we can customize just for you, and downloadable workbooks to jump into right away. Here at Eduro Learning, we provide professional learning for educators at the intersection of technology, coaching, and leadership. Our mission is to empower the relentless learner in you to embrace your inner leader and make a bigger impact in your school setting. Join our Coach Better Facebook group and connect with us on social media for more great resources at the intersection of technology, coaching, and leadership. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode, and we will see you next time.